Good night. Sorry, and welcome to the Galen Hour. This is season 5, and this is episode 6. We're in our last episode of this part 1 of a 2-part series. So it is a pleasure to be here with you again tonight. We are talking about Belize's medium-term development strategy, and the pillar we are starting to focus on tonight is the trade deficit reduction and government's initiative to reduce trade deficit. So it's a pleasure to be here with you tonight. We have a full house. All 3 of our guests are in studios. I will welcome them shortly, but I want to ensure we welcome our co-host, Ms. Gabrielle Hulse, who is joining us virtually tonight. Gabrielle, good night and welcome.
Hi, good night, everybody. I'm so sorry I couldn't be there in person, especially when we have a full house, but I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, we're happy you're here. We missed you last week, but we're truly happy to have you on with us tonight. So it should be a very interesting night. We have in studios with us tonight Mr. Sergio Tillett, who is a Senior Project Officer in the Belize Marketing and Development Corporation. Welcome, Mr. Tillett.
Thank you for having
We
us
look
here.
forward to your discussion and contribution to tonight's show. We also have joining us tonight Ms. Tricia Gideon, who is the Acting Deputy Director General in the Directorate General for Foreign Trade. Ms. Tricia, welcome.
Thank you.
And we have sitting to her, is that your right or left? Mr. Andy Sutherland, who is the Director General in the Directorate General for Trade in the Ministry of Foreign Trade. Welcome, Mr. Sutherland.
Thank you. We're glad to be here.
It is a pleasure. So we have a packed night for you with good information. This has been a truly educational series so far. This is our 6th episode, like I said earlier, and every single night that we've met on a Wednesday for Galen Hour, it has been information on one of the pillars. So we've talked about poverty reduction, we've talked about economic development, and now we're looking at trade deficit reduction. So it is a pleasure. I look forward to all the valuable information that will be shared tonight. I encourage you to stay tuned with us. We'll take a quick break and we'll start with our discussion. Stay tuned to the Galen Hour.
With our unique student-focused services, Galen University prides itself in doing everything possible to facilitate the success of Galen Eagles. The flexible payment plans, student loan options, and Eagle scholarships make Galen affordable, accessible, and attractive. Treat yourself to the gift of a Galen education. Apply today and secure your spot. Come soar with the Galen Eagles. Visit our website at www.galen.edu.bz or give us a call at 615-3129 or 614-6415.
Whether you're starting fresh or finishing what you've started, there's no better gift than the gift of a Galen education. Let 2024 be your year to discover your inner eagle. Visit our website at www.galen.edu.bz or send us an email at admissions@galen.edu.bz or give us a call at 615-3129 or 614-6415. This Christmas, unwrap a brighter future at Galen University, where the magic of learning meets the joy of the season.
Welcome back to the Galen Hour. So we have our guests in studio. We're talking trade deficit reduction. And I want to start by asking our guests to just tell us a little bit about what their offices do. And so if we can start with you, Mr. Tillett, if you could tell us a little bit about what the Belize Marketing and Development Corporation does.
Okay, sure. Good night once again. My name is Sergio Tillett. I'm the Senior Projects Officer for the Belize Marketing and Development Corporation. We are the marketing arm of the Ministry of Agriculture, Food Security and Enterprise. And as such, we are tasked with the responsibility of finding markets for our small farmers and small agro-processors. We engage a lot with farmers from different communities across the country, dealing with farmers who grow onions down to farmers who grow rice in the south, beekeepers, and even farmers within the Coyote district that would have fresh fruits, which we are dealing with as pulps. So all of these commodities, we will normally try to find markets, whether locally or foreign. And that's what we are working on, especially with countries like El Salvador and Bahamas, which we recently attended an expo there, to ensure that we could find markets and ensure that our farmers have a set livelihood when it comes to products. And all of this is going to link in to be able to have more exports for the country. And that's what we're discussing here tonight now. So that's what we're working on.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you. And Mr. Sutherland, would you like to tell us what the Directorate General
For foreign trade.
for Foreign Trade?
Thank you. Certainly. The Directorate General for Foreign Trade is the Department of GOB within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Foreign Trade that is mandated with the creation of trade policy, the development of trade policy, the negotiation of trade agreements, the implementation of those agreements, and of course we represent the country on all trade-related matters in international forums such as the WTO, the CARICOM community within SIECA and SICA, and any other forum where Belize has an interest in trade relations. Certainly, we provide the technical backstop to a number of government ministries that also have their hands in the trade realm, because trade is such a broad field that it covers the mandates of many other line ministries as well. For example, the Ministry of Agriculture and BAHA, those are heavily trade-related departments, and their mandate focuses a lot on what happens with trade. If you look at the Ministry of Finance and Customs, Customs is another partner to the Trade Directorate. And we look at the Bureau of Standards with the creation of standards and technical regulations. The Attorney General's Ministry, because all of this is treaty-based and is rooted in law. And there are many others that I could mention, but I think those are the main ones that we interact with on a daily basis to be able to execute our mandate. So the mandate is broad.
It is broad, and it's absolutely important. When we're talking trade, we're talking about our economy and
Indeed.
really our nation's survival, I would want to think, to a great degree, right? All right, so thank you for that. We have a better understanding now of what you bring to this discussion, and I am really happy that you're here with us tonight. So if we could just talk a little bit about when we talk about Belize's trade deficit, and I know the term deficit has a negative connotation, but I don't believe it necessarily is exclusively negative. You know, when you talk trade, you have to be talking about, balancing trade. So if you could tell us a little bit about, when we talk about Belize's trade deficit, what are the things that we need to talk about? What's important for us to know?
Sure. I could lead off. I could speak about the trade in goods aspect. My colleague Teresa would speak on the services aspect.
Okay.
But typically when the trade balance, when trade balance is being discussed and trade deficit is the subject of the day, they're focusing on merchandise trade or trade in goods. Well, there's a compendium trade in services aspect to it. Recently, you've been hearing that if we look at 2022 data, the trade balance would be around $2.1 billion in deficit, meaning that we import $2.7 billion worth of products, and we export $485 million worth of products. And you would say, look at those figures and say the disparity is astronomical. But I always find it useful to unpack these numbers, because we live in a growing economy, a growing country. The tourism sector is booming. The infrastructure development in the country is booming. The housing market is continuing to increase and keeping pace. The services sector, such as the BPOs, are booming. You have new buildings going up. I always look at the buildings that Transparent has built on the highway, and are usually amazed at the level of development happening now. You look at the other sectors like the insurance. You see Atlantic Insurance, new building going up. All of this building has to come from, the building materials has to come from somewhere. And if we look at the imports, the majority of it is to fuel the development that we're seeing. If you look at the first top 5 imports into Belize, they number $1.09 billion worth of exports, the top five. And we're looking at product categories such as minerals and fuels and construction materials. You're looking at machinery and mechanical appliances. You're looking at vehicles, and you're looking at, surprisingly, tobacco. Made the cut, top five. So, that's the top five products being imported into this country, $1.09 billion. If you look at the top 10, that jumps to $1.67 billion worth of imports. And you're looking at articles of plastic, everything you import into this country that is plastic based. And that basically goes, into the productive sector, into your homes. You basically purchase articles of plastic everywhere, right? Footwear and clothing. You look at chemical products. You look at iron and steel and fertilizer, critical for the agricultural sector. They can't function without fertilizer. So the top 10, $1.67 billion worth of imports. So you can understand what that number, why that number is so high, because it is fueling the development of the country. If you look at the food imports for 2022, all food items that we import into this country was roughly $314 million in imports, food imports, and that includes the prepared and preserved foods and all the processed foods that Belizean seems to like.
That is good, putting things into perspective, because you would think, oh, we have so much variety of foods and, a lot of it being imported, that sometimes you don't realize that that's not the major import
Indeed.
into the country.
And if you compare that to what we export $485 million worth of products in 2022. Of that figure, 442 million is products for food and including live animals. We export a lot of food, the commodities, the processed foods, the juices, the Marie Sharps, etc. And the bulk of our exports are food. If you look at the difference, there's a $40 million difference between the food export and the merchandise and hard item exports and the manufacturers, etc. And that's a disparity that we're faced with. So what this is saying is that simply we're a net food exporting country. And if you take that into context, you would better understand and not be so alarmed that we import 2.7 billion. But at the end of the day, that's 2.7 billion Belize dollars. That's what, roughly 1.378 billion US dollars, which has to be paid for through foreign exchange reserves or earnings. And we, as we said earlier, the exports are 485, but the other half of that is what we earn from services. And much of what we spend on merchandise goods fuel the services sector. We're talking about the BPOs, tourism, the infrastructure development that is happening, the housing development that is happening. It has to be fueled by imports from outside. We don't produce these items, and that's where the disparity lies.
Yeah, thank you for that. I mean, when you think about it, that our imports are fueling our development, then you have a whole different perspective at looking at our trade deficit.
Thank you. So I agree. And I think many times people miss the services aspect because it's not tangible. And as he noted, that a number of our agreements are goods focus. And we have the EPA, which is the Economic Partnership Agreement between CARICOM, the CARIC Forum, and the UK, and then we have with the EU. But we also have one right here, close to home, CARICOM. And I highlight those two because those two include services. And services also includes the establishment of businesses and the movement of people. And he mentioned that the Directorate General falls under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and foreign trade and immigration. So I work a lot with immigration when it comes to the agreement with CARICOM, because to have services you need to move people, and people need to have the right to enter and to work in your country to perform those services. So currently Central Bank collects much of the data on services, and we work very closely with Central Bank through the balance of payments, and they collect in a few areas, and in particularly they look at travel, other businesses, information and computer telecom services, and these areas they highlight because they bring in, they call it the inflows, the highest inflows, right? So we are looking at inflows and outflows. So the outflows are the exports and the inflows are the imports. And so travel is our number one service, as you would note, and other businesses under that is legal and accounting, and they have a positive trade balance or balance of payments. Others are engineering services, which is also positive. And you look at architectural services, we import more than we export with those. And some technical and scientific research we do. But it's important to note that with the great import values, we are fueling our tourism sector, which is helping us to bring in the foreign exchange that we need, which is a sector that we try our best to highlight when we're looking at opening an area, when we're negotiating with another country. So in terms of the numbers, when we look at the inflows into the sector, we're looking at what we're importing, close to 1.6 billion, more or less. And when we look at what we're exporting in services, it's about 7 to 8 billion. So Belize dollars. So that's what more or less the services sector incorporates.
Looks like. Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Tillit, you wanted to add, and then we'll invite Gabrielle. We don't want to forget she has joined us virtually, so you can have a go, and then we'll bring in Gabrielle.
Sure. When it comes to the Ministry of Agriculture, and under which we fall under, is that, as was mentioned, in livestock is one of the main things that the ministry has been promoting. Especially, it may be an informal trade at the moment, but agreements are being done to make it a formal trade. And the figures we were looking at compared to what has been done this year, it has grown a lot more. So we might see a better balance between imports and exports when it comes to the actual food sector. So the ministry has been doing a lot, especially when it comes to livestock, but also we have been concentrating on other stuff that, as we had mentioned regarding El Salvador, regards to trade of agricultural commodities. And once this could come to fruition, I think we should be able to see a much better balance when it comes to agricultural products.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for setting the stage so we better understand what we mean when we talk about trade deficit, and certainly what it means for Belize. Gabrielle?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Thank you to all our guests for setting that context of the trade deficit. I think Ms. D mentioned it. There's always a negative connotation, but I think that the guests did a really good job of pointing out the value of imports as well. But I also just want to highlight, because this is about, the trade deficit reduction as a strategic objective of the MTS. And within the MTS, we talk about we really want to drive more export-oriented growth. And so I just wanted to know, especially from the perspective of your agencies specifically, what is the importance of driving that export-oriented growth? And Mr. Tillett touched on it a little bit too, but from your agencies, what kind of specific projects or programs or initiatives are going on in your agencies that would drive that export-oriented growth in the country?
Mr. Sadan, sure.
Sure. Thank you for the question. Certainly, a part of our mandate is to negotiate the markets that can accommodate the exports of our products and new products such as cattle and any new products that is produced within the country. Currently, Belize has significant market access. We have significant market access under the U.S. Caribbean Basin Initiative, where 5,000 products within the AHS classification system can be exported to the U.S. duty-free. We have a similar arrangement with Canada to a lesser degree, 1,500 plus products can enter Canada duty free. We have the Caribbean community, which we're a part of, where there is a duty free trade within the CARICOM. And we have economic partnerships agreement with the UK and the EU, where the majority of our commodities are exported. And those comprehensive agreement covers almost 100% of the products in the HS and anything that Belize can export. Bilaterally with CARICOM, we have bilateral agreements with 5 Latin American countries, the DR, the Costa Rica, Cuba, Colombia, and Venezuela. And on the national front, we've negotiated an agreement with Taiwan, a partial scope agreement that covers almost everything that we produce and sell. And under that agreement, I think you've heard that shrimp and lobster is a big commodity. The export of animal feed is a big commodity under that agreement. And recently, BSI had shipped 200 metric tons of direct consumption brown sugar to Taiwan. So the trade with Taiwan can happen, is there, and can accommodate the products that we can produce. We also have an agreement with Guatemala, an existing agreement, which under that agreement, live cattle can be exported formally. Under that agreement, there are other circumstances and challenges that the exporter may face, but these are things that can be overcome. And we're currently in negotiations. Well, we're about to enter negotiations in December with El Salvador for a partial scope agreement as well. And this agreement will cover much of the products that the Ministry of Agriculture is pushing, the fruits and vegetables, etc. So Mr.
Mr. Tillett.
Mr. Tillett, my apologies, had mentioned earlier that they had gotten access for 4 main commodities being produced in Belize, and those are the risk. They have gotten clearance for the risk assessment to be able to export. These products would still face a tariff until the partial scope agreement is concluded, where the tariffs are negotiated away and they can have duty-free access there as well. And similarly, we're also positioning ourselves to negotiate an agreement with Mexico. We're about to complete a landmark study. It's a computable general equilibrium study that is geared to identifying the impact of a free trade agreement or a substantial agreement with Mexico, so that the government of Belize is informed of the challenges and to help us steer clear of the pitfalls that may befall the economic actors that would operate within that agreement. So definitely the ministry is doing a lot to be able to give our producers the access for the products that we're producing. I must add that all markets, both domestic and international, is denominated by your standards and food safety and quality. So if you're not able to meet those requirements by these countries for quality standards and food safety, you won't be able to export. And this has been one of the challenges to grow the export basket. Certainly, there is some work that is necessary by the productive sector for us to be able to put more products on the market and take better advantage of these agreements that we have.
I mean, this is...
Sorry. Oh, no, I was just going to say thank you to Mr. Sutherland. I like that he mentioned about the data as well, about generating data, so that we're not only entering these trade agreements or entering these trade initiatives blindly. We're entering them with data, and we're entering them, with studies that support it.
Indeed.
Absolutely. I like the fact that you said we have significant market access, because sometimes the regular person on the street, or even those of us who are going about our business don't realize the amount of trade agreements that we have negotiated on behalf of our country and or so how then do we enable, or what do we do to ensure that we can actually take best advantage?
Public awareness. Public awareness, because with services, there's not a tariff. We talk about restrictions. And so we are already engaging in a lot of trade with services through the internet, going to Mexico for medical care, tourists coming in here, Grace Kennedy setting up a branch in Belize, people, consultants throughout the region coming here to work and provide a service. That is trade. But these trade agreements just secure or lock in the preferential rates or remove the restrictions for these foreigners to come in and provide a service. And so that's the benefit of these trade agreements. But trade is happening outside of these trade agreements.
Okay. Yes, so this is absolutely important. Protectionist policies. Do we still have these? I know as small countries and years ago, those were things we did to protect our local economy or local exports. Is that still something of major concern for us as a small nation?
It is. Certainly, by virtue of being a member of CARICOM, we're a customs union that allows free trade, but there's a common external tariff that each member states must apply. And this common external tariff is what we apply as import duties at the border on goods and services. For most products, agriculture and food products, it's set at 40%. For manufactured goods, it goes down to maybe 35, 20%. But still, that Belize and CARICOM maintain the highest tariffs in the region. All right? And as such, it's a legal form of protection afforded under the WTO agreements. And as such, when we try to engage with Central America, who basically operates free trade agreements and have duty-free access throughout, there's always a challenge to be able to strike that right balance for an agreement that takes into account our need for protective tariffs and their need for duty-free access. And it's always a challenge and a hurdle to try to overcome. So yes, it is from that perspective a challenge for Belize.
Yeah, absolutely. But at the end of the day, our government must look to the benefit of our growing nation and our growing exporters, right, as well. So it's a balance. You're talking balance of trade. It's literally striking that balance that benefits both us and still attract trade and export, as trade and investors into our country. Mr. Tillit, did you want to?
I know Mr. Andy mentioned earlier about the commodities we were lobbying with. The Ministry of Agriculture in March 2022 did a first visit to El Salvador to meet with where our fellow counterparts in the Ministry of Agriculture and livestock of that country. And we were noticing that there was like an overproduction of certain commodities, and we knew that there was a possibility of doing trade with them. As was mentioned, the pest risk analysis, which is the first step to be able to export, have been completed, have been approved. But then that's where the Directorate General for Foreign Trade will come in to assist with those tariffs alleviation so that we could compete, because we must remember that our fellow neighbors like Guatemala and Mexico are producing the same commodities, and they're doing this in larger scale. So their economies of scale is far better than what ours is, so they can compete when it comes to price. In quality, we are sure that with the work that the ministry is doing, it is getting better and better. Our local products have potential, but then the problem is going to be the price. So that's where the different trade agreements that can be done is definitely going to assist the agro-productive area.
Okay, so there's absolutely a lot of work being done, and a lot of work that needs to be done, but the work continues. We're at 8:31 actually, so we'll take a quick break and we'll come right back to complete our discussion. Stay tuned to the Galen Hour.
Become a member of the Galen Eagle Alumni Association. Reconnect with your fellow classmates, rediscover the Galen Eagle spirit, and reawaken your inner eagle. Come home. Come celebrate 20 years of excellence with Galen University. For more information, contact us at 615-3129 or 614-6415.
Whether you're starting fresh or finishing what you've started, there's no better gift than the gift of a Galen education. Let 2024 be your year to discover your inner eagle. Visit our website at www.galen.edu.bz or send us an email at admissions@galen.edu.bz or give us a call at 615-3129 or 614-6415. This Christmas, unwrap a brighter future at Galen University, where the magic of learning meets the joy of the season.
Welcome back to the Galen Hour. We're talking about trade deficit reduction with our guests that we have on tonight. We have members of the Directorate General of the Ministry of Foreign Trade with us, and we also have Mr. Tillett, who is from the Belize Marketing and Development Corporation. So we were having a discussion that's quite interesting about trade in Belize and all of the agreements that we have negotiated with as many countries as have been listed by Mr. Sutherland within our neighbor, as well as in the north and the eastern part of our world. But we want to talk about what are traditional exports in Belize, those sectors, and what are some of the challenges that the sectors are facing. And Mr. Sutherland, you want to get started?
Sure. Well, traditionally, Belize has been exporting what we term the Big Five. It's marine products, which accounts for, in 2022, 11% of total exports and earned Belize some $53 million in foreign exchange earnings. Marine products generally includes the lobster and the shrimp products, the conchs, etc. And there's always a challenge to grow the export because these are managed resources. There are only so much you could extract from the sea within a particular season. And as such, if you want it to last, to remain in perpetuity, then strict management has to be the theme of the day. And if you look at the news, you've seen where the Fisheries Department has been active with confiscation and charging people for illegal harvesting, etc., or undersized harvesting, undersized product. So that has its limitation. But it's still a substantial portion of what we sell to the world. If you look at sugar, sugar is our biggest export. It accounts for 33% of what we export to the world. And in 2022, we earned $162 million worth of foreign exchange from sugar. You've seen sugar go through a challenge over the last 2 years based on external international prices, low prices. It's a commodity price that fluctuates based on market forces and global market forces, and as such it goes through a period of low and a period of high. Recently we've seen in the news good prices being paid out to farmers because prices have cycled up, but sugar remains strong, but still subject to commodity, the fluctuation in commodity prices. And what has helped as well is that we have two very aggressive sugar producing companies in Belize, ASR and Santander, who are determined to increase production, to access the CARICOM market, to access other markets that may be available. We spoke of Taiwan earlier, sugar going to Taiwan, and certainly there are other markets where we could sell sugar as well. You look at orange juice and frozen orange juice concentrate. This was one of our big five. I'm not sure if we could call it one of the big five anymore. In 2022, it only accounted for 5% of total export earnings, some $24 million. Traditionally, we've seen citrus, sold per year around 65, $70 million, could be more. I don't have the exact figures, but certainly well above what it is selling now. And the challenge has been the citrus greening that is basically crippling the industry. COVID exacerbated the challenges where with the restriction and the movement of labor and people. The harvest couldn't come in, the production couldn't be done, and the supplies the supply chain that we are part of within CARICOM and other countries were severely hampered. Sugar, orange juice and the orange juice sector is still struggling. I think government has done an assessment of the industry. At one point, the government made available a certain amount of money for farmers to be able to diversify, improve the groves that they have, and expand the groves into HNLB tolerant varieties. But I'm not sure how that program has progressed. But any replanting that has to happen takes a period of time for those groves to mature and be able to produce fruit. We've spoken to industry operatives who've said that we're at least 2 to 3 years before we can reap any meaningful harvest from those new groves. So there's a period where a period of maybe 2 to 3 years where citrus may still be challenged to be able to get back to the numbers that they once were exporting, if they do get back to that number any at all. If we look at bananas, bananas remain strong and consistent. 16% of total earnings are earning $79 million worth of revenue for GOB, for the government or the country in 2022. Speaking to our associates in the Ministry of Agriculture, they're guarding against a banana disease. I think it's the black sigatoka disease that has affected most of the countries who produce bananas around Belize. It's not here as yet, so as I understand it, but with the proximity of this disease to our own industry, some are saying that it's imminent. When that would be, I don't know, and how it affects the industry, that's left to be seen. But still, our big five has been challenged, or under challenge, or will face challenge. So there's definitely a need to diversify.
What is the fifth one? I've listed 5.
I spoke to marine products, sugar, orange juice, bananas, and I think the fifth, well, big five, because there's a grapefruit sector, but I didn't mention grapefruit. But basically, those are the big ones. Let's call them the big 4.
The big 4. So tourism doesn't fit in here?
Well, this is yeah, that's a service, right?
Okay.
So basically, there's a desperate need to diversify the export basket. There's a need to move up the value chain. For example, citrus, they are still producing quality product, but the quantities that once were being produced are no longer available. We have to look at strategies that take that high quality product and move up the value chain, stop exporting frozen concentrate and start producing high quality juices that can be exported into CARICOM and elsewhere. Definitely there has to be a rethinking that takes place for these commodities.
Indeed. Gabrielle?
Yeah, it's interesting to hear that, and I'm interested in hearing from the industry itself, from Mr. Tillett, because I know you're saying the big 4 is, heavily reliant on on agriculture. So I'm interested to know, because we're so reliant on the agriculture sector when it comes to our trade and our exports, how we react to how we act to being resilient. And since we're so susceptible to these vulnerabilities, to COVID, to different pandemics, to disasters, to these all these external shocks, I'm interested to know from the industry perspective how we react to those things, and how what kind of resiliency measures do we put in place, or do we have in place, or plan to put in place.
I think I could add to that one. When it comes to like diversification, that's something that the Ministry of Agriculture has been pushing a lot for. So not really depend on the traditional crops that they have been growing. As we may know, they have soursop is one of these commodities that we're looking heavily at. We have big companies like we have TKO in Cayo, we have Ayinha Farms in Lemon Alley area that they have planted acres of soursop to change this whole normal trade that we used to do. And we're looking at these, especially soursop, we're looking at like in concentrate form, juices. And then they're also looking at TKO, for example, is using the leaves for a tea that is used a lot towards the treatment of cancer, right? It has been proven already that it assists on that in that area. And they're focusing like half of their production towards leaf production for teas. Also, the ministry has been focusing a lot on, we have dragon fruit, which is something that they're pushing a lot for. We have some large orchards in the Cayo district and Orange Walk districts where we're having productions. For example, in Orange Walk, we had one particular farmer that was getting roughly between 5,000 to 8,000 pounds of pulp in every production cycle, and they get like 5 production phases within 1 year. So they're looking at this. We're keeping it most like in pulp form so that we can do for export. And this is one of the things that the BMDC has been focusing a lot lately as one of the products that we're working on, where we are looking at CARICOM, and also we're looking at Central America as potential markets to export these pulps. We are working on the packaging, we're working on the labelings and everything else that we need to get as, what should I say, like a foundation to be able to achieve this goal. So there are other fruits that the ministry is trying to push into so that we could diversify from the usual sugar like in the north or citrus in the south.
So hemp and soy, I know those two were once listed as non-traditional areas. Are those still areas that the government is considering?
Soy for sure.
Soy
I
for
think the
sure.
Ministry of Agriculture is pushing a very robust soybean production program. And we recently visited a processor in Blue Creek who is installing a very high technology factory for processing soybeans into meal and oil. And the soybean, there's a lot of byproducts from processing soy. You get the meal, you get the oil, and you can do other things with the bean itself to produce soybean oil. So,
Food and refined.
yeah.
And it feeds into the animal feed
Indeed.
production.
So with the inbuilt capacity of that factory, Belize will be able to, once the production is ramped up and the processing is at full capacity, we've heard estimates of maybe producing 20 metric tons of oil per day. That's if it runs at full capacity. But there is why is that important? Because that's a growth sector. The region, CARICOM, that we're a customs union, that we are part of the customs union, imports significant quantities of soybean oil, both crude and refined. What will be produced in the first instance in that facility would be crude, which can be exported to CARICOM. And the facility will be producing a high quality crude oil. And they have said that they have plans to refine as well, which is also a very lucrative market within CARICOM and elsewhere. That's a growth sector that should be pursued. We look at animal feeds. We've done very well with animal feeds recently. 10% of the export basket in 2022, $52 million. I think that's the highest ever in the export of animal feed for the country of Belize. That can grow. That's a growth sector. People need animal feed to feed livestock. If we can ramp up the production and explore additional markets, it's something to look at. Um, and as my good friend mentioned, the production of soursop and coconut is the next big thing that is happening, which the companies, CPBL, etc., are positioning themselves to be able to process these fruits into products. Definitely diversification. We're not starting; it's underway, but we need to keep the focus going and be able to produce these products to sell in the very near future.
And Andy, I just wanted to add, like, even though you put the four top commodities,
Right.
grains
Indeed.
are very important to the economy of Belize. Red kidney beans, these are primary products we're exporting into CARICOM. So, and it's where we want to increase production.
Right. Indeed.
Very good. I mean, it's really good to know that we are exploring the non-traditional opportunities, knowing that we saw what COVID did to us, you know, knowing that we have to move
Right.
into other areas to sustain our economy and our trade. But can we truly not talk about tourism?
We
Tonight?
can, but I think to talk about tourism is really to talk about the overarching area of services, because as I mentioned earlier, we're not talking about tariffs. We're talking about restrictions which come in the form of legal restrictions or policy restrictions. And as noted, you know, the top services sectors, tourism, ICT, and other businesses, we currently don't have many restrictions in place for tourism. And not having many restrictions is not necessarily a challenge, it could also be an opportunity. Many of our services sectors are not well organized. Like the ICT, even though we're exporting a lot of it, we have an ICT association, we have a tourism association, but we don't have any legislation governing the ICT sector. So what does that mean? It means currently that the sector is open, foreigners can come in and operate, and that means they're competing with our local ICT personnel. Is that a bad thing? No. But if you know what the vision is for your sector, then you can craft a law that will meet the needs of your people here. It's the same with the other business sectors such as engineering and architectural, which are very developed and they have legislation. And still, having legislation in place or these restrictions can be a challenge, and it can also be an opportunity. A challenge because, well, it'll be more difficult for foreigners to come in and operate in that sector. But at the same time, they can evaluate what's working and what's not and amend the laws accordingly to what's needed. And we go back to tourism, where it's not only, and I think people need to understand it, it's not only about tourists coming here. When we talk about services, it's you are online booking your ticket. It's you online learning about a place. It's about you setting up a business coming from anywhere in the world and providing some travel service here. Do we want that in this country? Is that what the sector wants to promote and develop? So again, it's how the perspective you take on level of competition. Do we want people to be moving to provide these services in that area? So I think the resiliency of these sectors lie in how organized they are and the legislation and policies that are in place to align with what our vision is for the sector.
Great, thank you for that. Yeah, I know we had to say something about that particular sector because it does contribute immensely to our economy. Yeah, so I just want to make sure. Gabby, is there another question you'd like to ask at this point?
Yeah, I know we've been talking a lot about export oriented growth, especially as it relates to trade deficit reduction. But I just want to know if we could also touch on, you know, maybe some of the other ways that we can promote that type of trade deficit reduction. You know, expanding value added products, or you know, how we were going to start promoting, you know, more foreign direct investments in the public and private sector. I want to know in any of your agencies if there's any initiatives going on to also spur movement and spur some type of energy towards those things as well. Not only exports, as important as that is, but also having these things as well to drive trade deficit reduction.
Well, maybe I could start off. Certainly. When we speak about foreign direct investment, it's something that the government has been focusing very heavily on. We've held 2 investment summits so far, and there are good reports coming out of the outcomes for those summits. From the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Foreign Trade standpoint, we've been pushing the possibilities that exist within the CARICOM market. As a integrating member, as we said earlier, the synergies exist, the markets exist, the demand exists within CARICOM to fuel growth for Belize. You would have heard about the recent initiative of the Conference of Heads of Government of CARICOM, who has said that by 2025 they want to reduce the food import bill by 25%. And as such, member states are angling and trying to find the best policies to be able to enable that, and that is that is focused on growing the agricultural sector and the food sector within CARICOM. And I'll just like to maybe quote some numbers to you that would be of interest to any investor looking to want to venture forward into a product that they can sell within CARICOM. If we look at food preparations over the period 2018 to 2022, CARICOM imported on average 269 million US dollars worth of food, prepared foods, that's processed foods, right? Certainly, that's a sector that we could look into. And why I say it's a sector that we could look into, because if you understand how CARICOM operates, the common external tariff is a barrier to outside, to external importation into the region. And as such, if a product does not exist or is not being produced in CARICOM, but it has a high demand, that member state can apply for what is called a CT suspension, which, if approved by the COTED, the Council on Trade and Economic Development, and that country is allowed to import that food into the region on a duty-free basis, right? And that is for consumption, and it can also be an input into the productive sector, into the manufacturing sector. But if that demand can be met by any CARICOM country, that approval is not granted, and that country is obligated to source that input from us, right? We've seen this for sugar, and this was one of the big challenges we've had with Trinidad and St. Kitts and some others when it comes to the importation of sugar into the region. It drills down into a very technical argument about standards and specifications, etc., etc. But at the base of it is that when we took the case to the CCJ basically opined that the CETs to be respected, and that Belize should be afforded the opportunity to trade within the region. Since that case, Belize has sold $20 million worth of sugar more. How do I say it?
20% more.
20% more worth of sugar into CARICOM over the last couple of years. It's not 20%, it's $20 million more, right? So definitely, it shows you that if we are aggressive and we have the product, we can sell it into CARICOM and we can benefit from the opportunities that exist in there. Just to name a few more products, cement. We have a cement factory. CARICOM imports 153 million US dollars per year. There's an opportunity there if we can align the rules of origin and the production to be able to access that market. something the category of sweet biscuit, cakes, pastry, etc. Amazingly, they import $126 million worth of product. Right? Who can't bake a cookie? Who can't make a biscuit? We produce some products here.
We do some.
We just need to produce it at a quality and at a standard that is exportable. And we would have access to these markets. Of course, these things are affiliated with brands, etc. But if there's a sweet tooth in CARICOM and you can produce something good, then you could sell. Right? If you look at cleaning agents, $121 million US per year imported. We have some cleaning agent company in Belize. They can explore the possibilities. Some of them are very good products. Teresa, my colleague, patronizes a company in Belmopan regularly, and she has good things to say about the product. These are the things that we can focus on to be able to export into CARICOM. So when it comes to foreign direct investment, there is a need for it, indeed. But there is much we could do as nationals within this country to be able to fuel some of the growth that is necessary. We just have to be able to be brave enough to take on the challenge and seize the opportunities.
Absolutely. Would Beltrade be
Indeed.
the department, the office, the agency who would assist our local people if this is the route they want to go, if they have a good product that they want to enter into one of the CARICOM countries? I mean, I know that the CARICOM countries come to us on trade missions for exploratory purposes to see which of their products can sell here, what are the opportunities here. So, I mean, I would be absolutely surprised if we're not doing the same, and I do believe we are doing the same.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed. Beltrade plays a central role in export promotion, and as such, they do provide a significant amount of assistance to persons who want to produce and export. Indeed.
Yep. So there's just a lot going on, and there's just so much more room for growth. And we do know that we need to look into the non-traditional areas to grow our country, our economy, our trade, and to hopefully reduce our trade deficit, since that's what we're really talking about tonight. But everything else is linked to it. We are running down to the last couple minutes of our show tonight, and I wanted to give you all those few minutes to give your last words. Okay, so you want to let us start with Shisha. We'll come back to you, Mrs. Susan, and then Mr. Tillett, and we can come back.
Sure.
To you.
No.
Well, in terms of the services sector, I think opportunities exist because it's such a new sector. And it's new for Belize because it's not well regulated. And I encourage persons who have a services sector that they want to export, that they be organized, that they think about what it is, where they want to take that sector, what markets they want to access, and to put in place the regulatory framework to assist them. Because it's important that if you want to interact with another country, they have their rules in place, they have their house clean. So it's important that we also put our house in order so that we can engage on a more level playing field. So services is in everything. It is not just outside of goods. It is integrated into the whole value chain of goods.
Thank you. Mr.
Well,
Tillett?
I think Mr. Andy mentioned something about CARICOM. A lot of information came out, which is very helpful. But the BMDC as an entity engaged in what we had about early October, which is the Caribbean Week of Agriculture, where we were able to expose some of the local quality products that we have, and the response from the different countries was very positive. They were willing to purchase these by containers if we had it. So now our responsibility is to ensure that we could get enough supply to be able to export. And these are things that as an entity, the BMDC is working along with the Ministry of Agriculture to ensure that we could work with these farmers closely or with these cooperatives to be able to have the quality product that we can export. There is potential. We can definitely reduce this trade deficit that we have. And It's only a case of capitalizing on these opportunities, and definitely the different trade agreements that are being drafted, are being done, is going to be a helpful thing to help out our farmers in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Tillett. Mr. Sutherland?
Yes, thank you. Certainly, I just like to end by saying that we did throw out a lot of numbers and concepts and investment opportunities that the general public may not be in tuned with that type of information. If you want to dive deeper and understand more, please contact us. We're available. We have our website, dgft.gov.bz, I believe. And you can always come visit us in Belmopan, where we'll be happy to speak to you about these things and share the information. We do share information with our colleagues, colleague ministries or agencies like Beltrade and the Ministry of Agriculture on the investment possibilities that are inherent in the CSME in CARICOM, and we'll be glad to share it with our public sector as well, private sector.
And private sector.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Sutherland. Gabrielle, would you want to give any closing remarks? Remember, this is our final episode for season 5. Until we meet again in January, when we pick up the second part to this 2-part series, and we'd start again on January 24th, so in the new year. So, Gabrielle?
Yes. No, I just wanted, I think it's been such a great opportunity to highlight all the work of the MTDS, and we've only covered 3 of them: poverty reduction, economic transformation, and today was trade deficit reduction. And I just want viewers to know that even though, we've only had, a few ministries highlighted, the MTDS is a whole of government approach, and it belongs to the entire government. And there's so many other line ministries that are still yet to be highlighted and doing so much work towards it. So just continue to stay tuned, and there's so much more information to come on what all the government's doing in order to achieve our 6 strategic objectives for the country. So thank you again to Galen for highlighting this.
Thank you, Gabrielle. You have been a fabulous co-host. I look forward to working with you on the second part of the series in the new year. And I want to thank our guests for joining us tonight, for the valuable information, for making things a lot clearer for us when it comes to trade deficit. And understanding what it means, understanding what our government is doing to reduce the trade deficit in our country. So I thank you all for tuning in. This brings us to the end of the Galen Hour and to the end of Season 5 of the Galen Hour. But we do have 2 special episodes of the Galen Hour coming up on November 29th and December 6th, and those are being dedicated to our observance and advocacy for an end to violence against women and girls. So we're supporting the 16 days of activism in the next 2 episodes that are coming up. So while we'll be back on the 29th, it's not to talk medium-term development strategy, but it's a talk about what's an absolutely important topic in our country, and that's ending violence against women. All forms of violence against women. So I do look forward to being here again next week, and hopefully you join us to hear what we bring to the table and what we are advocating for, which is a topic that I think all of us, have our strength and our voice behind. So it's time for women to no longer have to suffer any form of violence. So thank you for tuning in to Galen Hour for the last 6 weeks. And we do look forward to your continued participation as an audience and to sharing more information with you in the new year. So have a good night, and this brings us to the end of tonight's show and to the end of this season. I'm Diana Gomez-Perifit, and it's a pleasure for me to be the host for the Galen Hour. Good night and thank you.